riots, racism, and surprise viruses that kill you in a matter of days. No, it's not the year 2020, this is the latest season of 13 Reasons Why. For those of you who are familiar with my channel, I tend to do ending explain videos for these types of shows, but as I got further into this season, there were some major, absolutely bonkers events in this show that simply could not be explained.
I shit the bed.
Oh man.
So I came up with 13 major problems with season 4. I actually came up with 30, but these are my top 13. Now, if you haven't seen the show or the latest season, don't worry, I'll try to provide the proper context for each of these points so you can follow along. In no particular order, let's get into it. Number 1, the adult spying cabal. Over the course of the season, the kids get the sneaking suspicion that someone or something has been spying on them.
What if they're watching all of us?
Yeah, well, that's what I don't get.
For example, Jess's father knew about the Find Your Drink party, and Clay's mom knew he was at the mall even though he never mentioned it. That's because the parents have secretly banded together to create an app that spies on their children.
We know many of you have downloaded Dave's apps to read emails and texts, follow online activity, geotrack your kids, but if you don't have the apps yet, just talk to Dave.
Never mind how this is totally illegal, let's just think about the ethics of this. Do you really want parents having access to your kids' webcams, private emails? The potential for abuse here is staggering, not to mention the complete breach of privacy. I mean, God knows what my parents would find if they had access to my search history. And what about the parents? Is there not one parent in an entire school that's thinking, hey, I want to protect my kid and all, but this is completely unethical? So we're supposed to believe that roughly hundreds of parents kept this as a secret. Then there's the logistics of creating an app that can do all these things. Usually texts are so deeply encrypted that even the FBI, for example, has struggled to find backdoors to the iPhone. But this app is like the Swiss Army knife of apps. It can somehow uncover texts, emails, geolocate your kid, follow what they're searching. To develop this would take years and a team of experienced coders, if at all possible, but apparently Dave can do it in a few weeks. Thanks, Dave. Number 2, the school episode. About halfway through the season, the show tackles one of the most serious issues facing young kids today: school I had to bleep it out or else I'll get demonetized. Thank you, YouTube. Over the course of this absolutely harrowing episode, we see the trauma all these kids go through. Jess calls her mother and tells her she loves her as bullets can be heard in the background. Tyler holes up in the girls' washroom thinking he'll be the next one to die, and one of the jocks experiences a mental breakdown. It's terrifying. And then what happens? Haha, it's just a drill! Yes, the principal decided to stage a mock drill that involved police dressed up in army camo, bullet blanks to recreate the actual sounds of gunfire, and he didn't bother to tell any of the teachers. This is so horrendously unethical, I don't even know where to begin. The amount of trauma these kids went through on this day is enough to scar them for life. It's so bad, in fact, that it triggers one of Clay's dissociative episodes, and he steals one of the officer's guns.
Hey, stop! Am I safer now? Huh? I've got your gun!
Secondly, I find it unbelievable how this all played out. All the school's entrances have metal detectors, and the guards are all armed and patrol the halls, yet none of the students mention this. No one was like, hey, we have like 10 armed guards at this school, we'll be fine. Now, it's been a few years since I've been to high school, but can someone in the comments answer me if schools have gotten so bad that kids are actually taught how to mend bullet wounds? Is this a real thing? Now, this is going to segue into my third point. Almost none of the characters face any repercussions for their actions. Let's start with Principal Bolin, who did this drill. Faces no repercussions or backlash from the parents. But there's one character in particular who gets away with the most ludicrous things, yet is still allowed to attend school when it's clear he needs professional help. I'm talking, of course, about Clay. So let's take a look at some of his greatest hits. Clay, covered in fake blood, interrupts the school dance while holding a knife. Nothing happens. Clay is found hovering over the body of a drunk girl at a frat party and tries to run away when he's discovered. Nothing happens. Clay steals a gun from a police officer and holds up the school. Nothing happens. Clay escapes confinement at the psych hospital. Nothing happens. Clay is caught in the middle of a gun deal. Clay incites a riot. Clay beats the shit out of the sheriff's daughter's boyfriend. Clay torches the principal's car. Clay yells at the principal.
F*** you, motherfucker.
Clay vandalizes the school with graffiti. Clay smashes the security cameras. Clay holds up the sheriff's office by telling everyone he has a gun. Basically, Clay can do no wrong. Whatever he does, it doesn't matter. There's almost no repercussions.
So if nothing matters, like, why bother?
My thoughts exactly, Clay. And even Alex, the person who actually murdered someone, gets away with it. Number 4, the riots. I thought it was amazing how 13 Reasons Why was tackling the topic of police oppression before the recent events of George Floyd and the BLM protests. However, the way they went about addressing it is unbelievably ignorant. So in retaliation for the school and parents basically spying on the kids and the ever-increasing presence of the police force, the kids stage a walkout. And instead of going home, they kind of just mill about outside the school. So what does the principal do to these unarmed, peaceful, demonstrating kids? Calls the riot police. Not only does he call the riot police, but he actually has them attack the kids. Can you imagine if this ever happened in real life? Can you imagine the army of Karens descending upon the police headquarters wondering why their 14-year-old was clubbed in the head? How much press attention a school using riot police to beat up its students would get? But don't worry, no one faces any real punishment and they all still get to go to prom. Number 5, Zach. Zach Dempsey was my personal favorite character this season. He's that stereotypical asshole jock, but deep down he has a heart of gold who will do anything to protect his friends. His bromance with Alex throughout the season was one of the highlights, and how he dealt with Alex kissing him just goes to show you how much of a stand-up guy he is. But there was one scene that completely dismantled everything good about him. An entire season of liking this guy was thrown away because Charlie and Alex catch him trying to R-word the prostitute he brought to prom. I really have no idea why this scene was in here, and it's obvious he was going to do something really bad since we catch him with his pants unbuckled and he locked the door so no one could get in. To make matters worse, there are no repercussions for him either, just Charlie chastising him to, quote, be better. In addition to this, his substance abuse problem is taken to the extreme where it borders on caricature. There are maybe only 2 scenes in the entire season where he's not drinking. We get it, he has an alcohol problem, but does he need to have a hidden flask he takes a swig from in every scene? It almost becomes like a comedic element. Then there's the question of his super healing abilities. Take a look at this car crash he gets in at the end of episode 5. Like, I'm surprised no one died here. The car totally flips multiple times over the edge of a cliff, and here is Zach the next day. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that Clay was drunk driving here and nothing happens to him. Or how about when Zach gets brutally punched in the face a dozen times by Diego near the end of the season? Here he is the next day. He should look like an MMA fighter after a match. Number 6. AIDS. Oh, I guess I'm demonetized now. Yes, the final episode of the show is a heart-wrenching look at the effects of HIV/AIDS on the character of Justin, but it's almost as though the writers never consulted with any medical professionals on how this disease progresses. In the show, Justin is relatively healthy throughout the entire season, only developing a small flu near the end and even having enough strength to attend prom and dance the night away. A week later, he's dead. In reality, HIV takes about 5 to 10 years before it develops into AIDS, and once you have AIDS, that process can take an additional 1 or 2 years before one dies. We're supposed to believe Justin's contraction of the virus and eventually death to AIDS happened in a matter of months. Justin dying of AIDS thus becomes a cheap plot device to kill him off. If the writers really wanted to do this storyline justice, they would have brought him in episode 1, HIV positive, and we see how this affects him and his friends throughout the entire 10 episodes. It would have been way more emotional and better justice to those who actually suffer from HIV and AIDS. Number 7. Tyler is a police informant. Yes, what better person to deal with dangerous gun dealers than a high schooler? Throughout the season, we find that Tyler is working with the police as an informant to bring down illegal gun dealers. First, I question if this is even legal. Second, the ethics behind it are absurd. You want a kid doing these dangerous operations? At the end of episode 7, Tyler even has a gun put to his head. Not to mention, this episode ends with a big cliffhanger of this dangerous dealer and the sound of a gunshot. But in the next episode, it's totally brushed off and we don't know who, if anyone, got shot, and everyone kind of goes about their business as if nothing ever happened. Number 8. Anti-Climactic Ending. This whole season season centered around the kids trying to hide the fact they were all involved with the death of Bryce from season 3. Much of the season focused on Winston trying to uncover who the real killer was, and it becomes this sort of cat and mouse game whether or not they'll be caught, or if one of the kids will betray the others and go to the authorities. Everything seemed to be building to some sort of climactic ending, but what we get is kind of a dud considering this was the main driving force of the season. Winston finds out Alex drowned Bryce and is okay with it. That's it. That's the ending. Even Sheriff Diaz has enough and closes the case, even though the whole season it's hinted that he's secretly looking into things and trying to get to the bottom of it. Number 9, Clay. Clay sucks. Sorry, I just need to say it, but this season there's just no real reason to root for him, and the writing makes me not like him at almost every turn. Not only does he not learn from almost any of his mistakes, likely due to a lack of repercussions as I outlined above, but he spends most of the season talking about how love doesn't exist and it just hurts people, how he has no control, life sucks, etc. He's also a total asshole.
My mom and dad, they're not your parents, so stop pretending they are.
And are we totally going to forget that he left Zach to die after the car crash? A car crash he caused by being too drunk? These decisions, in my mind, make me not want to root for him, even though he eventually patches things up with Zach and Justin. Number 10, Estela. Estela is a new character this season who is the sister of a character named Monty, who died in jail last season after the kids pinned Bryce's murder on him. It's too bad she has absolutely no bearing on the story whatsoever. In fact, you could take her out of the season and it wouldn't change anything, which is a major bummer since there was so much potential here. She could have been actively working with the jocks, Winston, or even Sheriff Diaz to exonerate her brother who falsely was accused of murder. Instead, she's just kind of there, with little to no impact on the main plot. Number 11, college interviews. With minor exceptions, almost all the characters get into the schools of their choice, even though they have absolutely disastrous interviews with their respective colleges. Not to mention they've just been involved in the craziest shit. Check out Justin's interview here.
I had sex with men for money.
Or how about Clay's here?
What do you like most about robots?
Making them. The robots.
Okay.
I hate to sound like some old parent here, but what message does that send to kids?
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
They can basically get away with murder, hold the school hostage, light their principal's car on fire, but hey, it will have no bearing on whether you get into college or not. Number 12, racism. For a show that prides itself on tackling controversial and taboo subjects, the show rarely addresses race, even though much of the cast are POC. In fact, in the entire last season, it's only addressed once.
Why students of color were disproportionately singled out in the questioning.
For a season that deals with an overbearing police presence at school, you'd think they'd venture deeper into how this affects students of color. For example, why is Diego arrested after he fights with Justin, but Justin isn't? How come there isn't any backlash or even commentary on this? How come Tony, a person of Hispanic descent, is systematically harassed by one of the cops who calls him Padilla instead of Padilla? My problem here is that the show is basically screaming to discuss this, but doesn't go any further than a superficial level. And it's such a shame since you have an amazing cast of diverse perspectives, it could have sparked several really interesting character arcs and motivations. Number 13, minor quibbles. And I'm gonna leave you with a speed round of some of my minor problems. Like, why is the anti-sexual assault group called HO? Why does Ani unexpectedly leave for 4 episodes, and is that tied into the backlash her character got when introduced in season 3? Are we really gonna believe Tony is a boxer? He's like 4 feet tall and we mostly see him getting the crap kicked out of him. Was Diego really that dumb he was gonna take on a school shooter with a baseball bat? Are we gonna forget that Clay lost his virginity to the sheriff's daughter and it's never brought up again and it has no impact on the story whatsoever? And most importantly, did Clay not clean his pants after escaping from the hospital? Thanks for watching, everyone. Please make sure to like and subscribe. I always have new videos on the way. For more bad takes, you can follow me on Twitter at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember, Daddy loves you very much.